exciting day, another exciting edition of Offstage. Hello, I am Ward Anderson, and welcome to the show. Today, we are talking about LGBTQ artists and the music industry. With me, some very talented performers. Immediately to my right, may I introduce a woman that you may know as being one of the front people for Parachute Club. Please welcome Lorraine Segato. Yeah. A very talented songwriter, producer, singer extraordinaire. He is known as Gavin Bradley, and he's right there. Yeah. A very talented singer-songwriter herself, one of the best guitar players you will ever see on this continent or any other. Please welcome Girard. And a producer and songwriter himself who has traveled all over the world. He has performed, he has written, he has produced for artists, even including for himself. Please welcome Dwayne Minard. And I should say that the two of you have worked together as a duo before.
Yep.
And it's such a good marriage that you knew exactly what to do and you're seated apart from each other.
It's a getaway.
Yes. Yeah. Like my wife and I do at dinner parties. It was a good idea.
And you can still love each other, right?
Absolutely.
From afar.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, absence makes the heart grow fungus. I want to thank you guys all for being here. I've talked about LGBTQ artists before in different areas of show business, from stand-up comedy to movies and film and TV. And what I always like when it comes to talking about this issue, or this topic, I should say, is that it's one that wasn't around 50 years ago, right? 50 years ago, there weren't openly gay artists in any form of entertainment, right? So there's times when I go, wow, we've come a long way. But I say that as a straight white male. So can I say that? Have we come a long way? But it is an interesting thing, because if you think about it, it's still new, isn't it?
It's both those things. It's we've come a long way and we're still fighting the same fights and it's still new. So there's movement. There's been movement and acceptance, but there's the same kinds of discrimination that exists. It's you know, for women, you can't really talk about gay or queer culture without bringing in feminism in some ways, because the places where the fence stops and you can't get over, you can't tell anymore whether that's the gay fence or the women, you know,
or
like
the gender fence.
the gender fence. You know, it's hard to not unpack those two things together.
Do you wind up going, well, what demographic am I supposed to represent today? You know what I mean? Because you know, I've had women of color on the show who go, you know, I'm supposed to be both at the same time, and then at one point someone's like, no, you have to represent women, and someone says, no, you're supposed to represent people of color, and then they're like, I'm just trying to be me.
Isn't that what we're all doing? Just trying to be
Exactly. Yeah.
like when I
Right?
play guitar, I don't play a gay guitar. And I don't. Yeah,
You
it's
could decorate it gay though.
well,
You could get like an interior
Fabulous.
designer to kind of decorate it.
And by that logic, every guitar in the 70s was a gay guitar.
That's right.
Right.
You know, but I mean, there is something to be said about that. I mean, a lot of times people talk about gay artists as to why did they take so long to come out of the closet, right? And some people will say, you know, well, for this reason or that reason, or fear of discrimination or fear of that. And I think for a lot of gay artists, it's just I didn't want to be a spokesperson. A lot of people feel that way. They're like, I just wanted to make music. I didn't feel like being a spokesperson for anyone. Have you ever felt that way?
I haven't particularly. Have you?
I've just in writing, I've wanted to keep things kind of non-specific, gender-wise, just because I want everybody to be able to relate to what I'm saying. So in that sense, I didn't want to be a spokesperson, I suppose, creatively. I wanted the work to be applicable to everyone. That's been my approach.
Well, I will tell you that. One thing I've noticed about openly gay artists or even rumored to be gay artists, you know. I noticed that the music, let's say the love songs, has to be kind of gender neutral.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed there's a lot of I love you, you're beautiful, you're my soulmate, you, hey you, I love you,
Yeah.
you.
Which really limits you with rhyming.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, look at someone like a Melissa Etheridge, you know, openly gay artist. There's not a lot of music there that specifically mentions women. It mentions a you, right?
Or
It mentions
she.
love. You know what I mean? And I think that's what happens to a lot of gay artists, especially gay men. The music becomes you, because are people ready for an openly gay man singing about love to a
Never
man?
want to give you up.
Never gonna. Well, he wasn't gay. I used to look like Rick Astley. She's playing.
Used to. That's clever.
Well, no, but I mean, Melissa Etheridge's first hit that I remember is like, you know, tell me, does she love you like the way I love you? And I always assumed.
Yeah.
I didn't know Melissa Etheridge was a lesbian at the time, so
Sure.
I just assumed she was speaking about, you know, being jilted by a man. You know, but somebody, well, Sam Smith. I mean, I don't think he shied away from.
But fairly gender neutral. I've kind of
Is he?
taken a
Still.
listen to it, and because I was curious about that too. I actually wrote a song and wondered if I should change the pronouns. I wrote it about a guy, but then I was out and again, not this sort of spokesperson. I thought maybe I'll just say she,
Right.
to just switch it up, and I didn't. But that being a spokesperson thing for me, I'm not a 100-footer. You can't typically tell I'm within the queer community. So I wanted to be out, and I actually wrote a song for my trans partner. So I had to go back from she to he. And so I almost have to go back into the closet because we look like a straight couple now.
Right.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
That's fascinating.
It is fascinating and
You-
interesting.
You know what's interesting is I never had my coming out kind of like KD did, you know, I'm a lesbian, that's that. Because I came out as a feminist and a political songwriter, really, in essence. And included within all of that was representation for queer culture and gay men and lesbian women included within that. So I came out as a feminist first and a political songwriter first. And then as years went by, everybody knew I was gay anyways, and I realized, well, I guess I better come out because it's kind of obvious, to other people. But for the longest time, I felt that the first part of my life in Parachute Club, that I was in the closet. That I was in the closet, and actually, I actually had a lot of, I'd say, my own internalized homophobia.
Oh.
Because we were getting so much stuff around, like so much blowback around being political, around making statements in our music, around being feminist, about being called man-haters, and there was so much of that coming at me that I knew I couldn't just handle, on top of that, the homophobia.
Right.
So,
So
were you writing songs that were romantic at the time?
No.
So it was political.
In
lyrically-
fact, I've only ever written one love song. It's called "Hot in Pursuit," and it was, but that was it. There was no, you wouldn't be able to tell.
It was gender neutral.
It was gender neutral,
Yeah.
and even since that time. But now on stage, I'll indicate if I'm singing, like, let's say, a cover song that I love, like Me and Mrs. Jones.
Sure.
I'll go there now.
Right.
But
right.
I wouldn't have back then,
But I can look at, say, I was talking about this before, I can look at people of color in music, and I can go, these are artists that started to really come up just before my time, just before my birth, right? Whereas I can talk about in my lifetime, and I don't think of myself as very old.
You don't look it either.
Thank you, Lorraine. But if I'm talking about in my lifetime, I can look at when there were no gay artists. I remember 1982, Joan Jett singing Crimson and Clover. And the song explicitly references, I don't really know her, but I think I could love her. And I remember in 1982 being a small boy and finding that shocking. that a woman was saying that about a woman. And Joan Jett not out at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
But there was always a thing where women could kind of just
They
take
could kind
on,
of get away with it.
Yeah.
take on as though they were singing someone's song and they're just delivering it exactly as it was lyrically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But look at a George Michael who managed to come out of the closet.
Yeah. But was he ever really in?
Well,
I mean,
you know
come
what?
on, I was
Well, he
13
was
and knew
forced
he was gay.
out of the closet, really.
Well, you know what's funny is I find gay people say that. Gay people say he was never really. Come on. and I meet so many straight people that go, yeah, I thought he was straight. You know what I
How
mean?
could you watch the Wake Me Up before you go video and not know he was gay?
That's
I
so
mean,
funny.
come on. And then,
True.
if you want to go even further back to like Club Tropicana and the earlier Wham stuff, I mean, they were just, it was so odd. Well, to me, it was very
Well, what
odd.
is
But
interesting?
then he went really
What is
far with-
interesting is that he says it. He said it. He said,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty obvious I was gay.
Yeah.
Right. But he did say that for part of his career he felt he was singing to women, and then for part of his career he was singing
Well, I think
to
he
men.
was, he was
However,
dating women, too,
Yeah.
But
right, at
however,
a certain point. So.
You're talking about music that was still to the day he died not. It was gender neutral.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about
He was-
Carol Pope then.
yeah.
Okay.
Because Rough Trade, I mean, their first big
She was
hit
right,
was
yeah.
openly lesbian.
Straight
She was
up.
grabbing
Canadian
her-
artist
Yeah.
Carol Pope.
Yes.
Canadian artist Carol Pope. And I mean, High School Confidential, when I was 10 years old, when she sang it made me cream my jeans. I
Yeah.
was like,
Fabergé.
I mean, you knew she was talking about a woman.
Yeah.
So
But her early record, but when I came out of film school, the first person I saw in Toronto was a Rough Trade.
Yeah.
And one of her earlier songs, Butch Babe, you've got to be Butch, Butch, a Butchie Butch. And I was like, oh, that's so incredible. Like she was so out in an
Yes.
avant-garde way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't just she was queer and gay and lesbian. She was also like a fashion
Sure.
avant-garde art.
person.
Would she really have been one of the first, popular
In
gay
my-
artists that you can think of?
that I can think of as openly gay and like singing about it.
Maybe
She's-
Jackie Shane. Was Jackie Shane?
No,
You're
Jackie
always talking
Shane
about-
wasn't really. Well, no, I guess when he did Any Other Way, he was saying, "Tell her that I'm happy and I'm gay."
Yeah.
Elton
And what
John
year was that?
Came out as bisexual
Yep.
Yeah.
in, I believe, 1978
Yeah.
or something, 1978,
Sure.
79, and alienated more than half of his audience. It was actually a struggle for him. That was his bisexual man.
Yeah.
Well,
It took
David.
years before he could come out as openly gay.
Well, Bowie had done that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Travelers.
with Bowie, there was something, because he was working the androgynous angle, it was almost like people just went, well, of course. It was part of that. He was part of the 70s psychedelia. Elton John was a pop singer singing love songs at the top of the charts, right?
And wearing a lot of crazy stuff.
Right.
Right, but he was singing love songs that were written by a man, like by a straight guy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Right.
So he was.
But that's why it was more shocking
Sure.
for a man like him to come out and say he was bisexual
Sure.
than it would have been a David Bowie who was, in that era, portraying a character in a lot of ways where people went, well, sure.
Right.
I think bisexuality was part of the journey. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember coming out
Sure.
as bisexual also before I landed on. I think that my life choice is really here.
Sure.
And a lot of it has to do with, at the time the saying was, if you're bisexual, you're either too afraid to come out or you have no idea who you are.
Right.
You
sure.
know? And so I think that was part of the trajectory then. So then you could have someone like you could have Mick Jagger
When I was in
fooling
high
around
school,
with
we always
guys,
said
you
there were
know.
bisexual women and there were gay dudes that haven't admitted it yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's- yeah.
Or there were people
That's
like
what we
Mick
said.
Jagger and David Bowie and that whole kind of 70s ilk who would have played
Sure.
for a moment,
Yeah, sure.
right?
And some of them went one way, and
Yeah,
others
and,
went another.
and then they
yeah.
landed wherever they landed. But
I mean, there were hints and allegations, and there were little rumors, and there was innuendo. But in my lifetime, and I'm sure there was more. I mean, I'm just talking about as a kid listening to top 40 radio, who didn't delve more into music till he got older or different genres. It was Boy George. That was the first
Oh, yeah.
openly gay artist that I can remember. Now, if you think about it, if you look at just the numbers, we've come a long way. You're talking about 1982, maybe 1983, 81. So a long way when you look at that an openly gay artist hit the top of the charts in North America, And at the same time, and then if you say, okay, and then there was,
Pet Shop Boys.
Maybe.
Soft sell.
That might-
Soft sell.
Yeah.
That might be it, but no one knew of Soft Cell as an openly gay group. No one knew of
okay,
Pet
but
Shop
was,
Boys.
What about
was
the
Boy
guy
George
from
openly
Michael
gay?
I
States?
believe gay people probably knew that. I'm talking about
The general-
10, 12-year-old kid listening to the radio. Boy George was open about
Sure.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Was
The
he?
Pet
Was
Shop
he?
Boys.
Because
actually, I
he was cross-dressing. What I understood at the time was
Right.
he had boy in his name, and he
Right.
was cross-dressing, and that was his shtick.
His
That was his
shtick,
gimmick.
yeah.
You know.
Right.
And I don't know that he actually was out until maybe 90, 91.
Was he
talk
really?
shows.
I'm
I
going to agree with
just-
Gavin on this one.
I think I
Yeah.
just thought of it as a 10-year-old. I think that we just all, I was like 10 or 11 years old. I think we all went, well, that guy's gay.
Well, our parents told us
Yeah.
that too. My parents were like,
It's a
"Ew,
gimmick."
that's he's so gay," and
Oh,
that's
really?
really
Right.
lots of homophobic stuff around.
Right, sure.
Well, so
else
it
have
seemed, in some ways, it seemed just clear and obvious. But
I didn't know he
He
was
was-
gay until our band opened for him in Wonderland. And I heard him and his boyfriend screaming at each other on the tour bus.
Well, that was
and
the
I'm
drummer,
Like, what,
Was
it
yeah,
the drummer?
it was the
Drummer.
drummer.
Oh my God, that's
and
awesome.
I'm like, what's that? Like, first of all, we were so thrilled to be opening for them. Then we're like, who's that? Like, what's going on? Oh my God, all this crash, bang, boom, right? And they're like, oh, they're having a lover spat. I was like, that's when I really
Could you
kinda
tell they were
knew.
gay because they were fighting or the way they were
The
fighting?
way they were fighting.
oh, okay.
Okay, that's interesting.
It was very
So it's
passionate.
obviously a romantic
It was
fight, like
it was a passionate, yeah.
That's interesting.
And they were passionately, you know,
It's
into each other.
it's a thing that I begin to notice where I get it. I get it. I get why a gay artist wouldn't come out for fear of alienating an audience, you know, for fear of saying, you know, there have been rumors, I won't say who, but about a very popular act from the 70s who's done Vegas for years, had a lot of big hits in the 70s and 80s growing up, and still has a huge fan base that people have been saying forever is gay.
Oh.
And yet, and I won't say who it is, right?
Can I?
A guy or a girl?
I think it's a guy, and I think he might be Barry.
So
Buried.
the thing about rumors like that, they go, and I go, if the person's audience, especially a balladeer, a pop balladeer, whose audience is primarily swooning women,
Right.
I totally get why he wouldn't want to come out of the closet
Yeah.
for fear of alienating that audience. Going, I don't want them to be thinking about when I'm singing. I want them just to enjoy the song and not be focused on who am I singing to? What's the plumbing of the person that's the song is being sung to? And let's be honest, audiences get hung up on stupid shit like that. I
think-
could see why someone would.
I think the business gets hung up on it
Yeah.
more than the audience, to
Maybe.
be honest with you. You know,
Clay Aiken didn't lose his audience, right?
No.
Clay Aiken is that kind of a singer, like the person that we're talking
yeah,
about.
like okay, yeah, I guess.
Right? And you're talking about his fan base is primarily women
Yeah.
and women that like that kind of music, the loungy, adult contemporary music, right? He didn't lose his audience by coming out of the closet. He could still do it.
Did
but
Adam Lambert lose his audience?
don't
Did he
know.
have one? This is a question I think about.
Well, just to back up, I think Melissa Etheridge got more popular after she came
yeah,
out, to
she
tell you the
really
truth.
did.
Yeah.
Because she came out at a specific time, though. Same with KD.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Katie
KD
Lang did lose her
Girls.
audience,
and
and it's
Melissa
country
at
singer.
the same time. It was a moment in time. You know, half the time with
Yeah.
music, it has to do with the confluence of all of these things that are happening, that are both fashion, political, you know, whatever the trends are of the time, and then however you slide into that, you kapow along with it, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. When Ellen DeGeneres came out of the closet, she had her own TV series, a sitcom called Ellen,
Yep.
right? And when it was decided she was going to come out of the closet, they made a big deal over it. She appeared on the cover of, I believe, Time magazine with the headline, "Yep, I'm gay." And Saturday Night Live talked about, she got huge ratings when she came out of the closet on her show. So Saturday Night Live did a parody where it was the ABC network and the head of Disney going, "We've had such success from this, here's some other lesbian shows we're going to have." And then at the end of the sketch, they turn and goes, "But by the way, we're still not into that male homosexual thing."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was played as like, don't just, we're into the. So here's the question: Is it
Right.
easier? Is it easier to come out as a lesbian artist
think-
than a male?
It
than
has
a,
been.
Than a gay man.
It has been.
Right.
That
Yeah, I
may be
think-
changing.
I
now.
think you don't
I
even
think it
need
may
to
be
say
changing.
artist. I think it is easier for women. It has historically been.
Yeah.
I mean, guys think it's hot.
Yeah,
Well,
what
there's
is
that.
that? That's what I mean.
Really, I've never experienced that myself, but I'm looking forward to it.
Some guys.
You know what? I've said this before when we've talked about LGBTQ artists on television and other things. I say lesbianism is played as two things. It's played as butch,
Yep.
or it's played as titillating. It's played as a male
Yeah.
fantasy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whereas male homosexuality is played for laughs. It's the gay friend. It's the funny.
Yep.
You know, when
Yeah.
you think of Will and Grace, you don't think of Will. You think of Jack
Yeah.
on Will and Grace. You think of the flamboyant, right? So there is something to be said about that. That Melissa Etheridge, Ellen DeGeneres, Katie Lang. This was all around the same time.
Yeah, true.
Now tell me a gay male artist that came out around the same time and had the same kind of.
George Michael.
That's it,
Yeah.
Pretty much.
right?
Yeah.
The Pet Shop
and
Boys
George
around
Michael-
that time.
What about
actually
Michael Stipe?
But
officially-
George
No.
Michael also one of the
Oh,
biggest
yeah,
names
yeah.
in music
Michael
at the
Stipe, yeah.
time, at a comfortable place where he could
Yep.
come out of the closet and go, "I got plenty of money and fame. What are you gonna do? Stop?" Right?
Well,
like
he was dragged out of the closet. I mean,
tabloids, right?
well,
Yeah.
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 But
And he
you're
was
right.
never
still,
that
Michael Stipe
comfortable
came
with
out.
it.
Michael Stipe, I think, it was because it was a different because in the alternative realm. You know,
Did
the
he come out as
alternative-
gay or bisexual though?
I think he came out as gay.
I think he was pretty clear that he was
Iron
gay,
Maiden,
but
not Iron Maiden. Judas Priest.
Judas
Rob
Priest.
Halford. Rob
Right.
Halford came
Rob
out.
Halford, yeah.
Yeah.
But also something that he alienated himself from his fans for that reason.
Did he? I don't know enough about them to.
I do.
Sort of,
I do think so. I do think that in some.
Oh,
I don't
Freddie
mean.
Mercury.
I don't mean totally that it hurt him.
Freddie
Okay.
Mercury.
But I mean, it's
yeah, there we go.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Wait,
racking my
Thank you,
brain here.
Dwayne.
but did Freddie Mercury come out
He
in
didn't
the
really
height of
have
his-
to.
But again, you're
Yeah.
speaking from a gay man's perspective,
Yeah.
right?
Right? I mean,
Well, come on. they
We
were
have
called
the
Queen.
gaydar. I know. But I still think that like my parents would
Yeah.
never have guessed.
no, there's no way. There's no way my
No.
parents knew that Freddie Mercury was gay.
No.
1980, Radio Gaga. I mean, sure,
Even
we
the
look back on things
Liberace
now, but
people
I can
didn't
tell
know
you,
for a
listening to
long
Radio
time.
Gaga on the
Yeah.
radio, my parents did not know that Freddie Mercury was gay.
Sure.
If you don't state it, if you don't actually state it. So
We're also
Liberace, as
talking
you said,
about
just said.
Queen. We're talking about a group from the 70s and early 80s, pre-music video days, where you didn't see these artists
right,
a lot.
yeah.
So it's a lot different. You see an Elton John on stage with his feather boas and whatever, you go, this guy might be, okay, there might have been that in the early 80s.
Sure.
And there was. But you're talking about in the 70s when you didn't even see half the artists.
And you know what's crazy about all of that is that you look at Lady Gaga now, and in many ways, she's taken up the best of all these really interesting people like Madonna, Elton John, spectacle people, right?
Yeah.
And she's taken up the camp of it, the spectacle of it, and and you know, like nobody really talks to the degree of all the places that she pulls all her inspirations. But a lot of that outrageous would have been perceived outrageousness at that point with Elton John and his glasses and that has really become mainstream now. That's what's changed, is visually, I think, visual representation of what is boundary pushing in spectacle. Do you know what I mean?
So basically, the gays started making it look cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can go back to Madonna for so much of that.
Yep.
One of the
Yeah.
reasons Madonna had such a large gay audience was her way of going, you know, screw it, this is just who we all are. You know what I mean? Gay or straight, I'm just into, you know, being sexual and fucking things.
Here's
So I mean, but that is right. That is part of the allure to Madonna. Is that
Can you name a queer man of color that would have come out in the 70s, 80s, or 90s? Because so if it's hard for gay men, imagine what it's like to be a black man
Well, Luther
in
Vandross.
You should-
America.
Did Luther
Well, you
Vandross
should.
ever come
I
out?
don't think he officially
He-
came
no.
out.
he never
but
came
you
out.
should
Little Richard.
tell the story of Jackie Shane because he's also a Toronto phenomenon.
did
right?
did Little Richard ever come out of the closet?
I don't think. Is he actually gay though?
Oh, he's religiously, vehemently not gay
Yeah.
on talk shows all of the time. He's been grilled about it, and he's not out.
Okay,
No.
so I don't want to make an accusation
Sure.
here or something like that, but we've all heard rumors forever that Little Richard was gay
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and now,
He might have looked gay.
but I don't know
Well,
that,
it's like Prince. He kind of.
but I don't know
think
that
he played.
Prince was androgynous.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know that that Little Richard is gay. I don't know that, but I know it's a rumor that's followed him for his entire
That
career.
will really upset him, especially and his pastor.
Yeah.
He's coming after you.
You're in trouble.
You know. But that's, I mean, if you watch a miniseries, there's a TV miniseries about Little Richard. It's something that has been following him since the 50s,
Yeah.
since the early 60s,
He's
right?
upset about it.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, it does, you know, there are the artists it follows, and then it outs them, George Michael
Sure.
being one of those. And there's the ones that there are the rumors and they never come out, like someone in Vegas we were talking about. You know? So,
The question would be is what would be the point really, unless you feel the internal struggle because you don't feel free as a human being, what would be the point of coming out in the music business? Because the business itself, again, I hate to go back to the thing, it's not the audience that
Right.
is not willing to accept us, because if they love our music, on some level, we're touching some common chord with them, so they see commonality with us. So it's not that, it's actually the music business that keeps everything in its place, that makes it
That's
impossible
very
for people to come out.
straight
right?
and very white.
Straight and very white,
Yeah.
very rigid, very controlling, you know, and very afraid that they're going to lose their economic base. So, you
Yeah.
know, listen, I'm sorry to go personal for a second, but,
Please.
you know, I have a horror story I've never told anyone. And that is on my third tour of the country, when we had a record out with John Oates called Small Victories. We were touring the country, and we were kind of out a little bit early, so the houses were great, but they weren't like sold out like before. And in the front row, as always, you have record company people and their wives and the radio people, and you know, they're all there in the front. So your actual fan base never gets the great seats, right? It's always the radio people in the front. And I remember doing this gig, and all the women in the front seat were having such a great time, you know, and the guys were all like, like they had these looks on their faces or whatever. I go into the green room afterwards, and we do the meet and greet like you always do, and the women coming up to other women in a band and saying, "Oh, great show, we really enjoyed it." I get back to Toronto, and my record company guy says to me, he says, "Yeah, we didn't do so good that night. The radio programmers, they were all complaining that you were coming on to their wives, and they said that Billy was coming on to them, and, we're going to have to really figure out another way with this." And I looked at this guy and I went, "Are you frickin' kidding me? Like, there's not 1 inch of us that were trying to turn people in the audience towards anything. And besides that, Billy is straight, right?
Right, yeah.
But I mean, the audacity of a statement like that, where because people are having a good time, that's how insecure these record people are, And I've heard story upon story like that from mutual friends of mine who've had that kind of thing where you can't rock the boat with the business, right? Because the business needs to control what the message is for you, right? So I don't think it's the audience.
Yeah, agreed.
I think it's the business.
My issues have been with managers and A&R, not with artists or producers or
what
writers.
do you mean by issues?
Just a palpable sense of being uncomfortable. They know I'm gay, I'm in the room, and it's just awkward. You're not going to go for a beer with them if you're, if you're not straight. And these are usually straight guys. Yeah.
It's a predominantly straight, predominantly white male business.
Yeah.
The music industry. It still very much is.
Yeah.
Right? It's such a strange thing. I've talked about this before when it comes to comedy, and I've talked about it when it comes to entertainment. Sometimes I think we've come so far, and then sometimes I go, eh. I mean, in my childhood, we're talking about, and I don't mean 5 years old, I mean 15 years old. When you're making fun of your friend, you called him a faggot. It was always fag. And and I've said this before, it didn't mean gay, but it was the insult we all threw out, right? And I have gay friends now who grew up, exact same thing. They go, that's how it was. You watch a John Hughes movie, any of them, From 16 Candles to Breakfast Club to these are movies that now are revered as these coming of age movies from the 80s. Every time there's an insult from one boy to the other in those movies, it's always shut up, fag, right? So you go, if this is how an entire generation busted balls, if this is how we've grown up teasing each other, well then, how can we? Why would it be easy for someone to come out in popular anything when it's been joked about like a put down, right? And like I said, I see it in myself. This is what we did when we were kids, right? And I look on it now, and I've grown up my entire life in the entertainment industry. I've never had a homophobic bone in my body, and yet I was in those jokes like everybody else, right? Because that's how. So that's when I look at it and I go, we can talk about how far we've come, but that was in my teens, and I don't think I'm very old. So, right?
Well, and kids are still doing it. They're still calling each other fags, and
Yeah?
And dykes.
Yeah, not as much. Like again, that word, the
Yeah.
F word,
The F word,
it's stuck around the longest, and it's still a battle we're still fighting.
Well, and I hear it. I hear that as the word people to try to take back, right? I hear gay men call each other that, and with pride and things like that. And I get that. I've heard a lot of people that don't ever understand the whole taking back a slur. And I totally understand that. I totally get where that comes from, right? Because I see how gay men have made it harmless by calling each other that. I get it, right? Not being a gay man, I can't.
Do they? You guys call each other faggots?
Some do.
Do you?
Some do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everyone does. It's just.
Well, I guess women sometimes call each other bitches.
I don't even know
Right.
what to call. I'm so confused by what we're calling ourselves these days. Because it's all
Yeah.
generational too. Like
Absolutely. Like queer is such a hard word for
Yeah,
some people.
yeah, some
and
people-
it's,
Queer
and I've
was
taken that one
a
over.
slur for the
Yeah.
It
longest
feels
time.
very
but
British to me.
Queer?
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
very British punk.
there
People
are
like
so
my
many-
partner and I, queer is the word we need. We need something
'Cause
like we
it's-
are not straight.
It's just
Like,
all,
yeah.
all
It's
yeah.
really
Alternative,
weird when
yeah.
you look at the slurs that have come and gone when it comes to homosexuality, right? I mean, because queer, I now hear as an identifier where
It's
There
attached
was
to
a point-
culture, though.
but there was
you
a
always
point
go
in my
queer
life-
culture, right? Sorry to interrupt.
No,
but,
you're right.
But when you hear queer these days, it's not, oh, you're so queer. It's like, my queer culture is. So you're identifying yourself by your culture, which is your aesthetic. Whether it's like you're like the art queer or the this queer, or the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
attached to a whole other thing than just a slur,
Yeah, it's true.
right?
But queer was an insult at one point
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
right? So I look at probably more than anything I know, gay people have had some kind of a slur against them, whether it's dyke or fairy or fruit or, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many of these,
Well, I mean, David Bowie started to take queer back. That
Yeah.
was early. That was Queen Bitch. He's talking about she's a queer,
Yeah.
and it was a very positive reclaiming of that word. And he was hanging out with Andy Warhol at the
Yeah.
time, so that's when that started. I think early
Sure.
'70s. Yeah.
I was unaware of that. Thank you for informing
I'm
me.
guessing that was the one, an early
No,
one.
I
Yeah.
love when you learn something new.
I can tell you one step. One step is probably for straight people, not just artists, but straight people, to not push back against gay or the accusation of gay as if it's a bad thing. There was something on my radio show one day where someone made the accusation that, well, aren't you kind of gay? And I went, I don't see gay as an insult. So if that's how you're putting it, then whatever, right? And that was the thing is, and I'm not trying to put on a cape and fly around the studio right now, but there is something to be said about that. That
Absolutely.
the more straight people push back at gay accusations as being a negative,
Yeah.
then that's one step, I guess, in the right direction. That you go.
So your answer should be, oh, I wish.
I've always said that I know I'm doing something right when my gay friends tell me they like my clothes or my hair or tell me I'm looking good.
It was a compliment.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because women bullshit me all the time. My gay friends never do.
Yeah.
But now we've talked about that. We've talked about, who you sing to, or who it seems, or who you write to. Okay. But what about the audience? Is there I know so many gay artists that say that their biggest thing about when it comes to a fear of coming out or everything is that they go, I don't want my audience to suddenly just be gay. It's not that they don't want the gay audience, right? But then I'm doing the gay clubs, and then I'm touring the gay venues, and then I'm doing gay radio and everything. And it's not that they don't want that, but they're like, I want more than that. You know, is that a reality? Is it a reality?
Well,
that
you have to, nothing wrong with making a living, you know,
Yeah.
first of all,
Yeah.
I think, in the music industry, especially now, you know.
Yeah.
But on the other
that
hand,
there's a lot of money to be made in any genre. If you can be big in one genre, no matter that genre, you can make some money. Right?
but there's also just this idea that, I mean, what's the percentage, what is it, 10% gay or 5? It keeps changing. The world is 5% gay or 7 or something like that. So if you're
Maybe
writing
5%
specifically, so if you're writing specifically gendered, you're speaking to, you know, you're losing maybe 90% of your audience or 95% of your audience that you may want, your drive as a writer may be to have people feel what you're putting out there. And if they're unable to feel it because of a gender in the song, you've lost that, unfortunately, you know.
That's a good point.
I think about it in a different way, which is that I figure if there is a gay person who is moved or touched by something that, you know, we've written, then it's speaking to them aesthetically as well as how they identify sexually, right? And that's where I sort of tend to put my energy is where am I sending out, like, what am I saying to the world about what my beliefs are, about, like, what am I telling people about who I am as a person, you know, what I believe in, what my values are. And then to me, like, it doesn't matter whether they're gay or they're anybody, you know, it's then I'm connecting them to a like-minded individual who is probably not going to mind that I'm gay. Do you know what I mean?
So you found your audience. You just find the right audience.
You just find
yeah.
authentically who your people are, who your tribes are, right? Your circles of people, and then it doesn't matter because there's going to be times in your life where you play to only a queer or a gay audience, and there's going to be times in your life where you're playing to a mixed audience, or you're playing to a completely straight audience, and so you have to be the most authentic person in all of those situations. Like, you can't, like, kind of hide yourself for one and then not for the other,
Sure.
right?
Well, now let me ask you guys this. I mean, you're all artists, but I mean, you guys work a lot in production, producing other artists and things like that. When, say, a label or a manager or someone finds out that you're gay, do they automatically then assume to try to put you with gay artists? Do they automatically assume that this means you're a certain kind of producer, you're a certain kind of songwriter?
I think maybe a certain type of producer, especially when, you know, because my vein is house music, right? So,
Sure.
and the industry doesn't really take that genre seriously, or at least didn't when we were working together. Yeah, I think they would sort of, well, that's for the gay market or that, but they didn't specifically
gay
give us a gay
clubs.
artist.
Yeah.
Right.
Although our sound wasn't
wasn't.
particularly gay. I know that sounds like a funny thing, but we weren't really gay sounding
Right.
as a production duo.
What would that sound like?
Like
In house music, what would that sound like?
well, like circuit house, right? Like the
Right,
tribal.
oh, yeah, okay.
Tribal
the
house
tribal
was
circuit
big at the
DJ
time,
sound.
so it was
It
very
still is,
gay
yeah.
identified, yeah.
Right.
So yeah. So no, I mean, as they wouldn't sort of segue us into gay artists. But they would probably classify the music as more for a gay audience.
Right.
Well, with my solo stuff, singer-songwriter stuff, I was represented by a bunch of straight guys, and their intentions were great. They were, you know, this was sort of 2002, 2005, that range, and they were all very gay positive people.
Sure.
And they were saying, you know, it is the time to be out and do your record and just be out. So I did that. They would have loved it if I had been gender specific in my songs, because they were thinking, okay, this is like actually something that we can capitalize on at this point and market in a certain way. We kind of realized, I mean, I think all of us thought my audience would be gay men. And we very quickly realized that that wasn't the case, that most gay men were listening to female artists sing about men. And they were
that's
able to sort of feel
because
that.
the target is specifically men.
Yeah, well, if it was a romantic stuff,
That's
it
what
was
I mean.
yeah,
The subject
yeah,
is
yeah,
specifically a man.
yeah.
Like it's
And for-
raining men. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Or just any like Madonna,
Yeah.
Lady
Yeah.
Gaga,
Yeah, yeah.
any,
Sure.
or
Britney Spears.
and all the gay men that refer to their favorite female artist by first names, even if
Yeah.
they're not an
Right.
artist like Madonna that goes by first name, because it
Britney.
feels your best friend that's singing about her heartbreak and her her love life, right? So there's just some sort of a relatability there that happens, I
Right.
think, with gay men, and so we realized that after they tried to sort of guide me specifically to a gay audience, that wasn't necessarily the way to go. Yeah.
I find it interesting too that when we do talk about gay artists, it often falls into the same genres. I don't have a single gay country artist sitting here, right? There's a couple. There's more that are rumored, right? But in general, there's no gay country artist sitting here. There's not a gay rapper sitting here, or
There's a gay guitar
hip-hop
player.
artist.
You probably play every genre.
Right.
I do.
But
I
I mean-
actually do, yeah.
But think about that. Think about how there's entire genres that don't claim. I mean, maybe country. You could say Katie Lang.
Yeah, the country music industry, like when you talk about the industry now, that's where they're controlling everything. You have to look perfect, and I mean, I feel sorry for those artists who are genuine, awesome artists. It doesn't matter if you're gay or what, you just have to be perfect, right? So, and fit into their little box.
Right.
Listen, I remember being backstage with Katie Lang, and we were taking a walk at the back of a festival, and a big country artist who shall go unnamed came walking by and called her, he went, "Get out of here, you dyke."
Oh God.
And I was so floored. I was like, oh my God. And he was walking with another really big artist who was kind of taken aback by that. But I mean, he actually called her a dyke. And he was a country artist. And I thought, oh my God, talk about falling right into what you think about country music, which is it's homophobic, hyper-masculine, total testosterone, rigidly focused politically, and all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're right, you don't have a gay country artist here, because I would imagine more than anything they would stay in the closet.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't mentioned Frank Ocean, though. Frank Ocean is out,
Good point.
singing specifically about men,
Good point.
doing everything on his own terms.
And very popular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And very popular.
extremely. Yeah.
So does that mean are we turning the corner, so to speak? You think it's going to be easier for artists to come out and just go, look, I'm out. This is my music. I'm with a person of the same gender, but this is what I do. Interpret the songs the way you want, but I wrote it the way I did.
Yeah, I think that time is coming for male artists as well. Now,
Yeah.
there was Alex Newell, who was on Glee. He was one of the cast members on Glee.
I'm glad you brought up
Yeah.
Glee, because one thing about Glee, the TV show, is that I remember that's probably the first time, and it was very popular, that I saw a two-guy version of Baby It's Cold Outside.
Right.
They did that on a show aimed at teenagers.
Yeah.
And that was something impressive,
Yeah.
something that you would not have seen when I was a teenager.
No.
You know, I believe you and I are around the same age, the three of us. And when we were teenagers, you would not have seen that. And that was something that I was impressed with. I still to this day have that on, my Christmas mix or whatever on my music. And, the song, it obviously works that way. It's not a gender-specific song.
Well, TV shows, Will and Grace,
Yeah.
Glee, all these shows may be actually what's paving the way now for music finally. That might be it.
Sure.
Because, the single by Alex Newell, he's singing, "Boy, I'm All Cried Out Over You." And it's just totally relatable. Vocally, he's kind of male and female in a
Sure.
certain way, and it just works. You can relate. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we've definitely turned a corner, though, and I think the opportunity that we have is to get to be able to gather as a community and play these festivals and different. I have a lot of opportunities musically because I'm out and comfortable, and even before I was out, because I was just so open about the idea that, you know, the whole alphabet exists out there. So they're looking for artists. They want musicians. They want to have music of this stuff. So,
You know, I think it's good we have this conversation. I'm glad that we're able to do this. And yet at the same time, I'm often thrown back because never in my life I've never had to think of myself as a white male artist, as a white straight artist. It's nothing I ever have to think about. I didn't learn to play an instrument as a white straight guy or as a straight anything, right?
Yeah.
No one learns to play the piano because they say, I want to be a gay pianist, right?
Yeah.
So there's also something strange about the fact that it's almost like we expect, like I said at the beginning, we expect everybody to kind of be a spokesperson. We expect everybody to kind of be representative of their community when maybe all they want to do is play the piano.
Yeah.
Maybe all they want to do is sing, play the guitar, produce
Yeah.
music, tour with their band. So, you know, I can talk about how far we've come, but that's when we'll have really turned that corner, when we don't look at a gay artist as a gay artist, when we don't feel the need for them to represent themselves or identify that way. Because there is no gay 8-year-old right now learning to play the guitar going, I can't wait one day to be a gay guitarist and to come out as a gay guitarist with my gay band doing my gay music. You know?
Yeah.
But there is an 8-year-old out there somewhere going, I feel different, I don't know why yet. I'm going to look for something that represents me, and they will look in every corner that they can find for some representation that reminds them that they're okay.
so then it's our responsibility to
So,
be out,
Well,
in a
it's
sense, to those little 8-year-old boys. Like,
what it is
I don't
it's just our responsibility to sort of be recognizable to them in some way,
And
even if
authentic
it's
to
really
ourselves.
obscure for other people. But I think that people who identify as different will always look for themselves in places, right? And
Well, I can tell you that
Right.
I've spoken to LGBTQ actors and actresses and directors and writers and comedians, and the one place in entertainment where gay people seem to find the most acceptance is in music. I will say that is the place where they can most often find their own home. They can be accepted. They can find their own way. They can find their own niche. More people. I would say music more than any other form of entertainment. That is a positive thing about music, I do think.
wow, that's so funny because I feel the opposite.
Do you?
Yeah, I feel like I think that ideas of
Because I think
Yeah.
a gay woman can pick up a guitar and sing a love song better than a gay woman can come out of the closet and then say, and now I want to go off and I want to be the romantic lead in movies.
well,
Because they're
I
going to
think-
try
yeah.
to place her with
Actors
guys.
have it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a studio head that's going to go, no way, we're not putting you as the romantic lead in this.
Yeah, no,
in
I
this
get
movie.
that bit of it, but I also get that I get that if there is a woman who is an openly gay woman who is not, like, say, as say she's not as attractive as Saint Vincent, for instance. You know,
Sure.
her, right, who's a beautiful woman who's like extraordinary. I think, you know, for women still face a certain kind of gaze towards them if they are not absolutely in the stages of beauty that are accepted. You know, you're not going to be seen as lead worthy material
Sure.
even in the context of your band too. You know.
Well, unfortunately, the music industry is still very appearance driven. You
Yeah.
know, we said that about the 80s because of the MTV era,
Yeah.
right? And yet, no one really watches music videos anymore. I mean, we watch them online. And yet, that didn't go away. I've said before on this show and others that in the 70s, you could be really ugly and get a record contract, right? In the 80s, you couldn't. And it ruined a lot of people's careers because they weren't,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And we haven't slipped out of that. It's still, that's the thing, to be really popular in the music industry, it's still an attractive person's game.
Oh, totally. You could be a totally ugly man with thinning hair and it's down to here, and you really look awful. But look at someone like Leah Delaria, who's Orange, not the New Black, or the whatever that show is, the Orange show.
Yeah.
I mean, look at her. that comedian is not just a comedian, she's actually a really great singer. I don't know if you've
Unbelievable.
ever heard
She
of her.
is,
Yeah.
She's
yes.
a really
Phenomenal.
great singer. And that woman would never stand a chance
Yeah.
being a singer if she wasn't in this other show
Yeah.
as you know, as a comedian and an actress.
She got
And-
noticed with something else first and was
Yeah.
able to
I
launch
mean,
herself with that.
and because she doesn't look like, you know,
We also
Wasn't that
forgetting
the big
age
joke?
too, though.
Wasn't that the big joke with Britain's Got Talent with what's her name? Susan Boyle.
Oh yeah.
Well, and that was an
Susan
age thing
Boyle.
too,
But
right?
it was,
Like
it
we
was
all
an age thing, and it was an
expire.
appearance thing. She walked out on stage and people
Expire.
laughed. I remember watching the next day after she had done that on the news, someone going, "Can you believe it?" And I went, "Why do we seem surprised that somebody that isn't 90 pounds and looks like she came off the cover of Playboy, a good singer?" Like I found that I watched two people on TV actually go, "Can you believe she's such a good singer?" Yes. Why does that seem odd to you that she's a good singer? Meatloaf is a good singer.
Wow.
Was, yeah.
You know, have you
Yeah.
ever seen some of the people that came out of the 70s, for
Yeah.
God's sake? Some of them
Yeah.
look like shoes.
Well, again, but so the interesting thing about the 80s that you're talking about is at least in the 80s, you could have Dire Straits could be huge,
yeah.
and they were old.
Yeah.
You know, they were, well, not old, 40s.
As long as they had an
whatever, you know.
animated
You're very handsome.
video,
You could
they
have
were
been bigger
fine.
than
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I was Rick Astley. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
But I mean, nowadays you can't be over 30 and have a successful career in the music. Well, you can.
Well, you can't debut over
You
30.
can't debut over 30, and that is
Yeah.
shockingly sad. I mean, it's not just the good-looking thing; it's you have to be basically a fetus and present to
That's
the world.
right.
You know?
It's
And
true.
you're not
Where
really a
did we
good
get this-
musician till after that, right?
Yeah.
But every other industry, we decide, work your way up, and one day you'll be successful. And when you hit your 30s or 40s, you've hit your stride, and now you can be an executive. The music industry, we decide that, 22, that's where you're best.
Yeah.
That's where you're, you know what I mean? I'm 35. Well, you couldn't possibly be good at this. It's a very strange thing. The ageism is definitely a part of
That's
it
huge.
because that's why older artists often debut, if you're over 30, they often debut in niche markets. That's why they go into things like jazz and world music and places like that because it's, or adult contemporary, right? Because popular music isn't going to pay attention to them. Right? So all of it, so appearance-wise, I could see straight or gay. That's going to go against you no matter who you are.
But they've been talking about changing the expiry labels on food. You know, people don't want to have expiry labels on food anymore because apparently it's still good way longer after. I mean,
I agree.
if they do that with food, like maybe we're lucky. Maybe they'll change the expiry labels on people too. Because when you think about it, when you really think about it, as a musician, as a craft, you actually don't really get to become an extraordinary musician until you've done your 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell would say, in your craft.
Sure.
Right? And that doesn't happen at 22 unless you start at 10. I guess so. But you know what I mean? It really begins when you've lived a life and you've got this experience and you've got loss, you've got grief, you've got joy, you've got all this stuff you're piling onto your instrument and the work that you do. And then you're like a really full human being who can talk about it with, authenticity, but then you're not getting the chance to do that.
Yeah, you're too old. But
So-
we only get better as musicians as we age because we get better. That's just the thing. We're continuously.
Isn't that a weird thing? I find critics will often, you read like a rock magazine or something, critics will talk about how great the artist was when they were younger, but if you ask the artist, they will never say that. Rarely say that.
Yeah.
They'll say that they got better as they aged, right? You'll hear the critic go, no, they were better when they could barely play their instruments and it was off key and all that. And the artist will go, what are you talking about? It's way better now, right?
Well, I think when they're younger, it's a little edgier, right? Because you're just sort of balls out.
It's raw.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're raw. You're just doing your thing. I think as you get older, you refine it. You can really fine tune what you do as an artist.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you do get. I mean, Stevie Nicks released one of her best albums at 67.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it can happen.
but what's next? You know what I mean? I mean, we talk about turning that corner. Is it going to be a new up-and-coming artist comes out, has a mega hit, like the next Thriller, or you know what I mean, or the next Lady Gaga, or Adele? You know, is it? There's this multi-platinum debut. That artist says I'm gay, and whoa, that's what changes everything, or is it a legend that changes it? is it that artist that's huge now, that's, you know, hit after hit after hit, that then comes out of the closet?
I think it's more important for the artist, whichever artist this is, to just be out from the beginning. I think
Yeah.
that's would be the breakthrough, and sort of is with Frank Ocean, actually.
I believe that's where it's going as well. Like
Yeah.
kids are coming out at such a young age now,
Yeah.
and
And it's just
in this
normal, it's-
country,
yeah.
there's so much acceptance and so much conversation about it that, yeah, I think that's where we're going to go, and that's when we're going to see people are just lie. Who cares
I
if they're
think
gay?
it's also the content. Like, I think it's someone who's been out from the beginning, who's going to move along and make a record like Adele made. But the content, see, for Adele, it's not just that she was young and amazing, but it's in her voice, but it's the content of what like what she's writing about. The songs that she's writing are so extraordinary, right? I think it's
Personal.
Yes, I think it's the content of you know, you've got this person who's going to come, and that content is going to really strike a nerve that is across generations, and it's going to just bust it all open, where we're really going to get, it doesn't matter anymore. We have so much common ground, despite what our sexuality is. There still is so much common ground between us as humans, and that's where we need to be going. Then we won't be talking about this so much, right? Or we won't be needing to talk about it, because the nuances will be in sort of, did you have a difficult time coming out? Or do you remember back before that? Like now, it's like the kids today, gay is not a big deal to them. Maybe in certain parts of the United States or in certain parts of the world, but not so much.
Right.
Like, it's not a discussion with kids.
I guess at the end of the day, we can all keep our fingers crossed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you, panel.
Thank
Give
you.
yourselves a round of applause. Thank you very much. Another edition of Offstage. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Lorraine Segato.
Thank you.
Gavin Bradley. Girard. Dwayne Minard. And as always, when the show is over, we hope you join us offstage. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.